Welcome to our second roasting session. This week we've got Lloyd from Google who's kindly joined us. By way of quick introduction, so I'm John, so I'm the Managing Director of Roast, which is the performance agency within the TP Group. So very much specialising in SEO, PPC, paid social, display, and a lot of analytics as well. Lloyd, if you want to give a quick intro as to who you are.
Sure, thanks for having me. My name's Lloyd and I'm an agency development manager at Google. So I work with some of the UK's top independent agencies, Google Premier partners, such as Roast, part of the TP Group. And I guess my role at Google is to make sure that these agencies are kind of at the forefront of our technology, making sure all the teams are up to speed with what's new on the platform and how to best leverage that for performance clients. And yeah, I guess making sure that they're kind of testing out and everything that we're bringing to the market.
Brilliant, thanks Lloyd. So what we'll be chatting about today, so those of you who joined our previous session with Bing, we're definitely going to touch on a couple of similar things just to get Google's opinion on them. So we're chatting about preparing for the next few months as we're easing week by week out of lockdown COVID life, but then also we're going to have a quick look at the futures of cookieless world, which Lloyd can give us a bit of a steer on, because I know that's increasingly important consideration for everyone's planning and lack of panicking, I suppose. So Lloyd, to kick things off, let's chat about COVID and to set the scene a bit. Obviously, for a lot of our clients, a lot of advertisers, the last 12 months has been very it's fluctuated, let's say, depending on your vertical especially, but as an agency we've seen budgets paused, moved around, shifted from quarter to quarter, hugely impacted by severity of lockdown, let's say. Some businesses have managed to carry on as normal, a lot of financial services, B2B, but anything sort of B2C has been in some way affected. So I suppose the challenge that we as an agency have got, and a lot of our clients do, is when you've got no sort of historical data for the last 12 months and you're dealing with whole new trends, how do people start planning? What are good sources of information or good rules of thumb to help with planning for the next quarter, the next 6 months?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think it's certainly something we've felt at Google as well. I mean, we've got a lot of teams who they will generally look at year-over-year trends. They will look at things that are happening that will inform search behavior. And I guess the past 12, 13 months have just kind of thrown all that out the window. I guess the things that we would usually think about as marketers are things like seasonal events, whether that be social events that are in the calendar, things like weather greatly kind of changes what people search for, and I guess those kind of things. We've got a new element thrown into the mix, which is kind of social restrictions now. So that's definitely kind of another. I guess another pillar of consideration that advertisers need to consider, and I think essentially being quite flexible and reactive to those kind of micro peaks that we're seeing. So I guess I can point to what we've been seeing most recently, kind of in the last 14 days that we've been looking at since obviously the UK has been coming out of lockdown. We're seeing a lot of growth coming through the travel vertical, which I'm sure will be pleasing to hear for an industry that's been pretty much hammered for the last year, particularly around kind of staycations, caravanning, those kind of things, but also people looking to book holidays abroad as well. We've also seen like the finance sector been pretty kind of resilient. We've seen that they've been seeing increases, particularly in people looking to invest off the back of increased savings. I know this year's been tough for a lot of people, but I think it's important to acknowledge that it's been a year when people who've remained in employment have kind of I think the UK has got the most money in savings account that they've ever had. So people are there, and our research shows that people are willing to use that money for investments. And we're also seeing things like the auto sector picking up, people starting to buy cars again now that they can actually travel. So there's definitely a lot of kind of green shoots for optimism. And I'd say kind of in terms of things that we might see change after the pandemic. I think certainly a lot of online habits are remaining sticky. We looked at a specific vertical, which is kind of the electronics vertical, and we looked at kind of how it's been trending over the last year for online searches and purchasing. And we saw that in the last easing of lockdown in June, actually online search queries for the electronics category remained flat. It wasn't like people all of a sudden went out to the stores and stopped buying online. And likewise, when the stores closed again, we didn't see a massive spike. So I think that there's definitely a lot of habits that are kind of here to stay. And as well, another one to call out's probably home and garden. People are spending a lot more time at home. There's probably going to be a work from home situation for the foreseeable future, at least a hybrid model in a lot of companies. So people will continue to invest in their homes.
Perfect. Yeah, we've definitely seen on a recent New Biz Lead, home decor interiors has gone through the roof last year, because you're staring at your living room for 12 months. You really want it to look quite nice.
You've no excuse anymore.
That is so. I suppose a good question is we've seen that, as you say, some of these online behaviours are sticking. I think there's a piece out that came out not that long ago saying that they reckon it's going to be an overall 30% uplift. Obviously, everyone was forced to go online. 30% of people are remaining online, which is great for digital advertisers. In terms of, obviously, right, Google, everyone's probably going to be familiar with Google Trends, the standard sort of go-to places to help understand these patterns, because they are shifting so much more quickly than normally you would see. Has Google got any other sources of information, any other resources that advertisers can go and use to help them spot these upward spikes or these trends in their category?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple that I can call out just for kind of, and kind of happy to share these links with you afterwards to share with people on the webinar. But one that certainly springs to mind is the Insights page within Google Ads that launched probably a couple of months ago now. It was kind of being tested in beta for a while, where essentially it will tell you your category trends and how your own performances compared to the average within your industry, so you can get a good feel for, like, okay, we saw that the whole overall category peaked last week, however our impression share remained flat, or our traffic to site remained flat, so what can we do about that? So that's obviously a useful tool in terms of benchmarking. We also released on Think with Google a rising retail categories that will show you the top 10 categories that are trending at the moment, week over week, and then within those categories, what are the keywords that are driving those query growth. So in terms of real-time insights that we're talking about, these micro peaks, I'd certainly keep an eye out for those two. Other ones that we launched is Market Finder. So I know kind of it's definitely front of mind for a lot of businesses, kind of how they can grow their market share outside of the UK, and what other opportunities are there. So Market Finder is a great tool. You can kind of look at different categories and it will tell you kind of where we think the opportunity is. So, you know, there's a high intent in a certain location and maybe a low ad depth or a lower average CPC, so kind of helping you to navigate internationally. And then I think in terms of one thing that's front of mind, I think we'll probably touch on, John, in a moment, is just around first party data and using kind of your own offline conversions to plug into Google Ads, so you can get more of a robust measurement and also targeting strategy. We launched last month the offline conversion import tool, which will basically look at your website and look at your brand and give you like a step-by-step guide to how you might consider utilizing your first party data alongside Google's proprietary data as well.
Perfect, thanks. I think, yeah, the Market Finder to me stands out as maybe the most useful, given, yeah, you look globally, every country is going at a different pace. Yeah, you look at Europe having potentially another peak, they're still in partial lockdown. The US patterns have changed significantly because there's such a significant rollout of vaccines, same as the UK. So I think Market Finder is definitely the most interesting of those. So actually, we can take our wares elsewhere, but also shift budget as you need to, because we know depending on sector, but certain markets will bounce back more slowly. Okay, perfect. Something else that we've discussed before in these sessions is an increase in automation within digital advertising. I think those of us who've been doing it at the coalface for a long time know there's been reticence over the years from certain advertisers to let the Googles, the Facebooks, the Bings take over decision making. Have Google seen an uptake in the automated solutions within their platforms in the last 12 months?
Yeah, I think the last stat that I saw now is that I think 75% of our ad spend runs via automated bidding, whether that be auto bidding through SA360 or smart bidding via Google Ads. And I think the reason that that's kind of seen such an uplift is, first of all, the tech's improved vastly. I think, look, even as a Googler, I could hold my hands up and say when smart bidding first launched, oh God, how long ago now? But it was probably had limitations, and I think there was mixed performance. Obviously, since then, Google has worked with DeepMind to make sure that it's the best in class in terms of machine learning technology. And I think there's just so many signals now that we can take into consideration. I think when Google Ads was first around, we basically looked at the keyword and based user intent around that particular search term and tried to kind of second guess what that person will be looking to do. Now we've got a whole host of signals like previous search history, like what they've been looking for on YouTube, like device, location, time of day, all these kind of variables that I think for a human being to try and calculate the uplift or decrease in all of these variables, it's nigh on impossible. So I think you do need some form of automation technology within your bidding. I think is pretty much consensus in the industry right now.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think probably the biggest uptake we've seen over the years, e-commerce clients, it's the easiest one to just slap some bid automation on, because the point of conversion is there to be seen. But as you say, the new features to import, be it lead data, be it call center data, be it physical store data if you've got bricks and mortar, does actually allow the algorithm to automate to business value rather than just ads conversion, which depending on the conversion funnel may or may not have been of value. I know we see that a lot with travel clients, for example, where that lead could be worth £5,000 or it could be worth nothing, and without that information at your fingertips of algorithm, it's hard to sort of have that argument with the client. I suppose that leads us relatively nicely on to the second point we'll chat about today, which is this terrifying, confusing cookie apocalypse, or appreciation of third-party cookies, which obviously timeline-wise is early 2022. So what have we got? 9 months, maybe less, to start planning for this. So this is a big factor for all digital advertisers, obviously. It's going to impact you one way or another. It's going to change how you have to think and plan. In a very simple top-down level, do you want to just give us a quick description of what's actually happening and some initial thoughts on how advertisers can start planning around this and the things they can do to mitigate any risk or any change in process or planning?
Yeah, so I think it's come from I guess there's been a few different drivers behind this. The first one is kind of rising consumer expectation of privacy. So customers want to feel like their data has been protected, that they've got ownership of their own data, and that they can choose whether or not to share that. So I think that's the first thing to acknowledge. That being said, we know that users still expect a tailored and relevant ad to be shown to them. So I think it's like, how do we give them both of those desires? And I think also it's come from regulatory changes as well. Obviously we started off with GDPR and EU legislation since around cookies. We've also seen from the platforms, Firefox now is incognito by default, which obviously takes away your third-party cookies. Google Chrome is planning on deprecating third-party cookies, as you say, by 2022. So it's important to acknowledge that this is only third-party cookies for now. First-party cookies are still durable. I think probably longer term that might be less so, but certainly the first kind of action that I think that that advertisers can take is to make sure that they've got a durable tagging solution. So what we recommend is that they either use the one Google tag, which is the tag from Google Ads or GA4, or they use Google Tag Manager. So these will act as first-party cookies, and they'll be a lot more durable. There's still a lot of advertisers who are still using kind of legacy tracking. So the first recommendation would be to work with your agency or work with your tech provider to just kind of do a bit of a review on that to make sure that your tagging is as durable as possible. Second, we've already touched on it, John, but around first-party data. I think definitely the future will be around modeling. There's going to be a modeling involved in terms of lists for your remarketing as well as conversions as well. And the more information that you give the platform, then the more accurate and effective that the system can be in both measurement but also in targeting as well. So work with work with your CRM provider, again, work with your agency and figure out a way of how do we make it attractive for customers to want to give us their data, and then how can we make sure that that's been passed to our advertising campaigns on a regular basis to make sure that it's up to date and it's accurate. And then the third thing which is, I know that this is probably something that's still in evolution. As I say, this is still kind of very much a lot of moving parts. We don't have a silver bullet for this right now, but it's to kind of work with kind of tech providers around your data, making sure that it's consented, making sure that it's secure, and kind of invest in privacy preserving technology, so that you've got an accurate set of data that's consented and that's useful to your brand as well.
Perfect, thanks. I mean, that's a very good overview. I think there are a lot of headlines around it. There's a lot of moving parts. I think we're very keen to keep clients up to date as to there's a lot of unknowns. It's still the back end mechanics of how it's going to work. It's all we need to figure out by Google especially. In terms of those day to day who are using the Google Ads platform, what's actually going to change, if anything, for how they options within the platform, or be it theoretical or not, which elements might be most impacted, I suppose?
Well, I guess the main thing is going to be measurement. So I think we've kind of been through an era of precise measurement where we talk about it all the time. Everything's tracked, everything's based on return on investment, return on ad spend. That's probably, we're going to be moving from precision to prediction, is essentially what will happen with this. So in terms of the technology is going to be really important. As I said, a lot of it's going to be modeled. So a couple of solutions we've got at Google that are in beta at the moment, that obviously your clients, John, are welcome to test if it's something they're keen to explore. Enhanced conversions is one solution that we're looking at, which essentially will allow you to upload hashed first-party customer data, tie that in with consented cookies to give you the most accurate conversion reporting that's possible. The other one we're looking at is consent mode. Consent mode will basically adjust the tag based on whether or not a user consents to cookies or not. If they consent to cookies, then we will observe the conversion as normal. If they don't consent, we will still track the conversion, but then tie the two back together through modeling. So, if you have like a 70% consent rate, we will kind of model the other 30%, knowing which conversions are fired and kind of matching those up where we can through modeling. So there are a couple of options that we see working well. Again, reach out to us if it's something that you're interested in.
And for those with a more technical mindset, where's the best place for clients to stay up to date or see the latest updates from Google as to the rollout and how it's going to work?
So the Google Privacy Sandbox is the go-to place. It's probably a bit heavy for bedtime reading, I would say, but if it is a subject that you're keen to kind of keep up to date with and see, this is kind of a collaborative space where it's not just kind of recommendations from Google, but from agencies, from thought leaders in the space who are proposing different ways that we can tackle this as an industry. So yeah, if you head to the Google Privacy Sandbox, then that'll be your best spot.
Did you say it's not like bedtime reading, but it's very interesting. So something that we touched on the importance of your first party data. So this is something that we, as an agency, we've built out over the past 6 months. 12 months is our CX and CRM offering, just to make sure that the data you can have is as powerful as it can be. What other areas given that there's this big unknown moving on for the next 6 months, what other areas can paid search advertiser look at, knowing that's going to be of value anyway? So they've got their first party data, looking after that, optimized for that, knowing something's going to change within the Google platform, be it in actual reality or a bit more stuff's modeled rather than specific. Are there any other areas that people can sort of focus on, which is going to need attention anyway in the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think as well. I know we talked about kind of automation, and I don't mean that just in terms of bidding. I mean in terms of kind of creative as well. Where you can definitely, when you said kind of there has been a lot of reticence around automation, I think it's definitely that reticence will have to kind of fade, because there is going to be no way that you can optimize effectively without leaning into these automated solutions that will help you to tailor the right message to the right person at the right time. If you're not going to be able to get those ducks in a row if you're dealing with all these other signals, and then the challenge of a cookieless world as well, where you're missing data. So yeah, I'd certainly kind of start to get au fait with the solutions that we have already, things like dynamic search ads, responsive search ads, as I say, bidding to value where you can, in terms of business outcomes, because that's definitely going to become even more prevalent when we're relying on that tech in the future.
A somewhat shameless segue. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the last few months looking at messaging. Sure, a lot of people in the call have hopefully seen our recent white paper about natural language processing and assessment of competitor ad copy, which itself is based off Google's own white paper about the messy middle and how the hell do you get the right message to people who aren't giving clear intent signals. So I suppose, on this sense, with Google, obviously you've got Google provide the mass machine learning, AI driven automation to test 1 million variants of copy across thousands of searches every month, every quarter. What else is useful for clients to look at? Is it worth them spending time looking at the actual content of the message and the themes, rather than just let's blat out 1,000 different variants to see what sticks?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, John. And obviously referring to the research that you guys did at ROAS, and obviously the Google Messy Middle Decoding Decisions research, what we found was that people are willing to switch brands, and people spend a lot of time in what we call the exploration and evaluation phase before they move into purchase intent. So ensuring that you are part of that conversation in the exploration and evaluation phase and telling your brand story is really important, because people are more willing to switch brands, particularly D2C. People will move between brands based on a number of factors, which obviously you've outlined. A couple would be, scarcity, power of now, category heuristics. 3 off the top of my head, you might be able to fill the other ones in, John. But essentially, it's a case of making sure that your brand is telling your story through creatives, making sure you have vast combinations of creatives to show that user that message. And I think certainly looking at things beyond advertising, like your user experience, things like your mobile site, and ensuring that it's quick, that it's easy to navigate, and leveraging your brand assets. So any ratings, any reviews that you have, making sure that you're kind of screaming those from the rooftops, to kind of be there when it matters for people who are looking for a brand.
Perfect. Okay, thanks, Lloyd. We've got a couple, 1 or 2 questions from the Q&A, so we'll just address those to wrap up. So first things first, Lloyd, obviously a lot of people probably haven't attended the standard quarterly product updates. What are the sort of the key, off the top of your head, sorry, key to product updates maybe in the last 6 months from the Google Ads platform, the sort of standout updates or changes that people should have a look at? I made that question a little longer than the actual question in the
so there's a couple that I call out that stood out for me personally. The first one that you might start to see now, that's rolling out of beta gradually, that some agencies have been testing, including Roast, kind of tested this on a couple of accounts, is auto-applied recommendations. So what this is, it uses the technology of optimization score, and you can use a custom selection to choose which things you always want within your account and ask it to be applied automatically. So you can go, there are some that are quite simplistic and pretty obvious. So things like fixing disapproved ads for editorial. If you made a typo, if you've got a cap in there that shouldn't be there, then we'll fix the ad for you, resubmit it and get it live, which I know is a time-consuming task that's probably not very enjoyable to do yourself. Or things like adding in audience reporting, changing your attribution model to a data-driven attribution. You can use the system to select these kind of tasks, or move to smart bidding when you meet eligibility. Other ones that I thought were interesting was for YouTube for Action, when we now have the ability to pull in merchant data into those feeds. So you can use kind of, when you show a YouTube ad, you've now got a list of your products underneath that YouTube ad if you're a merchant, that you can target users. Couple that I already mentioned in terms of consent mode and enhanced conversions to help kind of navigate some of the first party data issues and privacy concerns. The other one I'd say is customer match. We're now expanding that to automate allow listing and also reduce the threshold and increase the matching. So customer match is definitely a product that you should recheck to see if you are eligible if you weren't previously.
Cool, perfect. Another question. So it's around the historically we obviously split out best practices, split out match types. Obviously, there's a change in Q1 around recommendations of actually just put them all in one ad group or on campaign. How's that? I mean, I appreciate a lot of people haven't actually had a chance to do that yet or see the impacts. What is that update? It was a relatively big change in recommended best practice about merging match types. Has Google had any insights as to how it's performed since it's moved? It's changed over.
Yeah, so probably something we could do a whole session on, John, to be honest. But I guess the top line is that we quite often at Google, and it's we used to recommend that people would break out their campaigns into single keyword ad groups, or I guess you still see now kind of legacy accounts that are split by device. They're split by match type. And all these kind of ways to try and get the keyword and bid as close as possible. So basically, so that you can bid on each particular search query the right amount. Obviously, now people are using smart bidding. you already have that layered over the top of it. So what you're doing by over segmenting your campaigns is you're segmenting the data and not give it, obviously smart bidding works on machine learning only works on the data that you provide. If you're over segmenting your campaigns, you're not giving the system enough room to learn, and it can sometimes hinder your performance. So yeah, we've seen a lot of success from people combining campaigns where it makes sense. So just segmenting your campaigns for big business reasons. So that could be you've got a different return on ad spend target for product A versus product B. So you want to split those out. That's a fair and just reason to do so. But splitting out campaigns just for the sake of it, it's not needed anymore.
Gotcha, perfect. I suppose that's going to become more important with the third-party cookie changes, just because data will be, to a certain degree, at a premium. So the more centralized you've got it, the quicker the machine can react and learn and make the right decisions.
Absolutely, and split it where needed. As I say, we're not saying chuck everything into one campaign, but it's just a case of don't over segment for historical reasons.
Sure. Perfect. Thank you, Lloyd. Everyone, that brings us to half an hour. It seems about right. Thank you all very much for attending. Lloyd, thank you for your time and your insights, especially on the third-party cookie data, which I know is a bit of a slow burn pressure for a lot of advertisers. We'll be following up for all attendees with an email, so we'll include the links that Lloyd mentioned about the new products and the new tools that we look at markets and trends. If anyone has any questions, feel free to get in contact with myself or the marketing team here, and we're happy to follow up.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lloyd.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Cheers.
Bye,
Take care.
Bye.